Welcome to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. I'm Melissa Joy, a certified financial planner and the founder of Pearl Planning. My goal is to help you streamline and organize your finances, navigate big money decisions with confidence, and be strategic in order to grow your wealth. As a woman, you work hard for your money, and I'm here to help you make the most of it. Now, let's get into the show. What if I told you that things didn't have to have as much stress and pressure to still have success? That is what we're going to be talking about today with Brandi Hudson, who is a performance coach and and she coaches accomplished professionals ready to move from achievement to mastery. We're going to talk about Brandi's base framework, beliefs, alignment, self-awareness, and emotional resilience, and how that framework can help you to live life on purpose with mastery and just less pressure. I can't wait for this discussion personally, Brandi. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation as well.
Well, I know just as I was preparing for this episode, I was thinking back to my career, and there was a point in time where I'd kind of climbed the mountain I thought I'd always wanted to climb. And there was so much anticipation of how it was going to feel when I got to that moment of, kind of career success. And I got there, and none of the pot of gold was not waiting for me at the end of the rainbow. And I kind of feel like that might be something we're talking about today, is like how to manage yourself in your career, in your life. But tell me, how did you get started doing this work?
Yeah, I think my story is so similar to yours. When I think back to being a little girl in Detroit, I was born to teenage parents, and we were really like, our consciousness in our house was around success, right? And it was really a way of building a great big beautiful life that when I was first born, I didn't necessarily have access to. And so there was always this through line of like, the more accomplishment, the more success that you have, the more financial stability you have, the happier you will be. And it wasn't necessarily stated, but it was definitely implied. So I started out on this trajectory of like, always getting the best grades. I was an athlete, and so always, finishing first. I was president of everything, captain of all the things. And then I went to, really great schools for undergrad and business school. I tried out for the Olympics in between. And
no
suddenly, there I was. But suddenly I found myself like a VP at a, Fortune 500 company, running a big team, with huge responsibility. I didn't love it. So I pivoted, and then I went to a startup, and I was like, you want to be in a startup, you want to, have a different experience. And then the startup did exceptionally well. And I was like, oh, I still don't love this. And so suddenly you realize that like you're on a never ending treadmill.
True.
When you're on a never ending treadmill, you realize like, I must be looking for the wrong thing. And so I actually took a step back. I was very fortunate to be in a position where I didn't have to work. So I took a step back and I said, I'm just going to work with myself for a little bit, and I'm going to seek to understand. I fundamentally knew the same skills that had allowed me to achieve a high level of success in life and in my career would also be in service to me understanding how I could get off that treadmill. And so I spent actually like a couple years just in self-reflection, self-care, reading, learning, researching. And then that is when I decided to start my practice, and I built out a framework of how people actually build a life that feels as good as it looks.
Oh, what does that even look or feel like? I bet so many of us are, just invested in. Tell me more.
Yeah, I think building the life or the framework. I want to make sure I answer the
Well,
question.
let's start with the life, and then I can't wait to hear about
So
the framework.
I think we all look outside of ourselves, and we see someone with this life that looks good, right? They've checked all the boxes, right? Perhaps they have a partner in life that they feel very happy with. Perhaps they have a child. They've, accumulated a level of wealth that feels as though they don't have to worry about the next thing. Their health is in reasonable shape, and we're like, wow, they've checked all the boxes, and that life looks really good. And oftentimes when you like sit and speak to that person, they're not as happy as they they would like to be, they do feel a lot of pressure to sustain those things. They
Mhm.
don't feel as though it's inevitable that the next thing, goal that they have, the next achievement they'd like to make will come to them. And so for me, it's about helping people realize that like we win from within. There's like nothing external to us that is going to help us create the life that we're looking for. And when we do kind of the inner work, when we focus on those soft skills that oftentimes people leave to the end, we can really like um reverse our life and start to have a life where we're like, oh man, I have checked all the boxes and I also deeply love the life that I have.
I am already moved by that framework of win from within because there are so many external signals that we all receive unless you're just in a vacuum without Wi-Fi and social media, but, everybody around you puts their best foot forward, for example, on social media, or even when you're just checking in with your friends and things like that. And so, I think the gap between reality and what you see and the signals you see could not be wider. So that really resonates with me that
Yeah.
success starting from within.
And I think that can be true. And I also think we've started to use that as a way of accepting that our life doesn't have to be so great. So I
Yeah.
think it's a tricky thing to think everything I see is a facade and can't be real. And so it's okay that my own life is in shambles. And obviously,
Yeah.
it's not that big of a chasm. But I also, like, I always challenge my clients to watch out for that because if you start to believe that nothing is real and so that it's okay to be in this place of those dense emotions, whether it be like shame is the most dense, fear that, things aren't going to work out, anger that society's the way it is, like worry that you won't reach your next goal, right? Like then you start to actually convince your brain that it's okay to stay in that place because everyone else is probably also in that place and they're just not telling me. Right. So
Yeah, I
we,
mean, the prevailing forces too, you could just wake up every day regardless of any of the construct of how you see the world and have reasons to be, glass half empty just right off the bat. And
yeah.
and the only person that gets to live with that, perpetually is you, right?
Is
So,
you.
yeah.
Yeah. So we wanna instead just be in this place of like, what is my own inherent potential? Like,
Mhm.
what am I capable of achieving in this lifetime? And just focus starkly on that. If we're not guided by these external influences, then we're more likely to align with what is possible for us. And I think that's where the real magic happens, right? So we want to be in that space of like knowing this is what I was put on this planet to do, right? And I am capable of achieving that, right? Because you know for sure that if you have a dream, then that dream is meant for you. And then you just have a stepwise approach, a framework that you work towards it with. And I generally tell people that when you're in that space, then you're not going to be comparing yourself to other people. You're no longer going to be checking boxes. You're just going to be like heads down, focused on like, oh, this is like what I am meant to do. This is why I'm here. And so this inevitably does have to happen. And now I'm just going to take action towards that. And that's actually going to feel really good for almost most people.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. So let's talk about that framework because I mean, just saying, "Oh no, you have this skill, these passions, this is what you're here to do. Please go with
Yeah.
that," doesn't sound like enough. So how are you tackling, kind of the components or the equation to make it more possible for you to embrace that?
Yeah, I love that. I think for me, I really landed in this place of like, I really wanted to work with people who had already accomplished a lot. I think as we think about having shifts in our world during this time, like our most powerful leaders should be in this place where they feel really well resourced because then we know that they have influence over the rest of the world and most accomplished people have some sort of framework, some sort of step by step process that they're moving through. So I was like,
Mhm.
okay, how can we organize this in a way so it really makes sense to people? So our base framework is really foundational to building that life that you're looking for. When we think about each step, what we're going to see is it's going to help us like reassess, like, what are we really holding on to and how do we view the world? So the first is like, what beliefs do you have, right? So for instance, many of your listeners, followers, watchers, right, are looking through this lens around wealth and money, right? And what are the beliefs that you actually have around money? So most successful humans, regardless of their like background, think that having more money than they currently have is hard. They think they're going to have to work hard. It could be hard. Like I'm going to have to every day like push in order to get to whatever that like final magical number that they're looking for, which is usually like somewhere not very close to where they currently are, right? So this idea that it's hard, this idea like money doesn't grow on trees. Also, like, what are these ideas that you have about our most wealthiest humans that you have access to? Like, sometimes if you don't believe that the people with the most money are good people, right? Or that they're doing good with their money, that's also going to create this chasm in your brain. So when we think about money, we want to think about money in this example just as a neutral resource. Like we don't want to have any beliefs about it having meaning, because money really doesn't have meaning. It's the person with the money that creates the meaning around the money. So
I
we
want
want
to
to
pause
just have,
there because I think that is so important that
okay.
money truly is a resource. It's not whoever, in your life with the biggest pile of money for most people, unless they have extraordinary legacy goals that they've really been intentional about, is not a success story. But using money as a resource to live a life of purpose and to fulfill your personal goals is to me very worthy and a success story. So thank you for sharing that, because I could not agree more that money
Yeah.
is truly just a resource for you to live your life and protect yourself as well.
Yeah. And everyone's entitled to it, right? So
Right.
there's no one who is more worthy of having money than another, right? And
Yeah.
and if you also have to believe that deeply, like that you are actually worthy of having all the money that you desire to have, because it's simply a resource and there are ways to align to what you're seeking, right?
Hmm.
And so we want to assess our beliefs around everything, right? So money is one aspect of it, which includes like our career and kind of like our ability to save, like whatever that looks like. But we also want to do it around our health and well-being. And we also want to do it around our relationships, both romantic and platonic. And so when you do this, like, really like thought diagnosis and understand like, oh, these are kind of the beliefs that I have around these things, and then I can shift them. And why beliefs matter, I mean, they matter scientifically. Some people sometimes think, oh, that's like a little bit, too spiritual or too woo woo, but they're scientific data that if we have a belief about something that's disconnected from what we're seeking, we actually put ourselves like in this state of like pause, because our
Mm,
brain cannot move towards something that feels dissonant from us, right? So we
interesting.
want to have a resonance with the beliefs that we have and what we're seeking. Okay. So if we think only certain people are entitled to money and our brain doesn't view us as that type of person, then we're not going to as easily align to it. It won't be impossible, but it'll be like pushing a boulder up a mountain, right?
So when your clients come to you and you guys have sussed out your, a set of beliefs, are they saying to you, "Oh, I realize that my relationship with money may be flawed, or my money beliefs may be flawed," or are you positing that to them and saying, "Oh, this might be a limiting belief, or this might be an obstacle to your success"? How does
Yeah.
that work?
It happens in both ways,
Okay.
but however, I usually find that like our trickiest, most limiting beliefs are subtle.
Mhm.
And I usually hear it in the words or the sentences that my clients are saying, and then I reflect it back to them. And inevitably, what they say is, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
But that's not the way the brain works, right? So
Mhm.
your initial thoughts, the things that you are saying, are almost always reflective of your like deeply held beliefs. And
Mhm.
so when we just simply push that away, that's our conscious brain saying like, I don't really want to believe that, right? But
Yeah.
it isn't. But our brain, much like the rest of our body, is run 95% off the subconscious. And so those
Mhm.
subtle things that you are saying are actually the computer that's running the show. The same way your heart beats without you thinking about it, the same way that your lungs breathe without you thinking about it. The majority of your brain works in that same way, but we've convinced ourselves that our brain is the thing that we control and everything else in our body is working on autopilot. But every aspect of us is working on autopilot, and our brain, just like our lungs and our heart, like can be shifted, but more often than not, are simply just moving through. And so we want to notice those subtle times where we say something that's off, that's outside of what we want to believe,
Mm,
instead
I
of
like
just
that.
pushing it away.
So I mean, the belief stage, that's a challenge. Like, that is not a 30-minute conversation where you just take it and run with it, right?
We're done with it. No, I mean, I like to. One of my beliefs is that change can be simple, right? So
Yeah.
I try not to believe for me, and I ask my clients not to believe that this is going to be forever. I'm not a therapist. I don't want to hold on to clients for a lifetime. I want to make, a significant change in a short amount of time, and then, past that time, then they can come back and we do check-ins. But this work is really meant for people to be able to ultimately learn to do it on their own. And that's where we get to the step 3. But first, I'll talk about step 2.
Let's do it.
Let's
Okay.
do it, which is alignment. And so, alignment is this idea that whatever you're seeking in life, you really want to understand why you want it. So, oftentimes people think that they just want money, but no one ever just wants money, because, like, if you just wanted money, you put it in the bank. But what do you actually want the money for, right? Like, do you want it for freedom? Do you want it to travel? Do you want it to have greater experiences? Do you want to have a legacy that you pass on to your children? So you really want to have a depth of understanding of like why you want something, and then like, oh, when I have that freedom, when I have those experiences, what will it give me? And
Hmm.
we really want to like deduce it to an emotion. Like, I think I'll feel peaceful when I have more money. I'll feel happy when I have more money. I'll feel joy when I have more money. And then the work is, in order to have alignment, you actually need to feel that way in advance. So
Ooh.
what we oftentimes believe is that like, when I get money, I'm going to be so peaceful and excited, but until I get it, I'm going to worry and be anxious and like and be fearful that it's not going to work out. And then that chasm is too broad, and then there's just too much to traverse. And so happiness is our birthright. We're meant to be happy the majority of the time. And what we have found is that society hasn't actually like stayed with that. We've come to believe that those dense emotions that I mentioned earlier of worry, fear, anxiety are normal. But
So
we
we've
should
gotten
really.
away from our inalienable rights.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
In many ways. Yes, we have, right? And so we
Mhm.
want to start to think like, oh, I when I am feeling these dense emotions, it's really to tell me that I'm off track, that I'm not on the right path. The same way pain comes to tell me that like, oh, I may need to see a doctor. You wouldn't be in pain for like 3 weeks and think it was normal, but someone will worry about a goal for like weeks and days and maybe even months on end and just be like, that's normal. Like, if I don't worry, it's not going to come to pass. Right.
Mhm.
So we want to start to shift things so that we are in those high vibration emotions more often than not, because everything, including resources, are attracted to people who are in those high vibration emotions. It actually puts you in, like, as we think about, because I like to help people ground this in science and data, like it calms our nervous system, which allows us to move forward. Those dense emotions put us into a state of fight or flight, which is just a survival mode.
Mhm.
And so you're not going to move forward as quickly when we're not in alignment with what we're actually seeking.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree more. Like, having that alignment makes a lot of sense. So,
Yeah.
and why wait?
And why wait, right? And just know that's when the path gets more and more challenging, right?
So you tackle part 2, and
Yeah.
then where are we at with part 3?
Yes. And they're not in order, right? We're doing
Yeah.
these all kind of like synergistically, but the S is self-awareness, and this is what allows you to ultimately do
Mhm.
this work on your own, right? So there's 3 other steps, but self-awareness is kind of the umbrella over all of them where you can pick up cues when you're like, "Oh, I'm off track."
Eh.
Right? When I can easily see for myself, like when I say something out loud and I'm like, oh, that's a limiting belief. I want to like work with that today to help to alchemize it, to help to clear it. Right. And so we really want to be able to more often than not catch ourselves when we're off track. So we don't always have to pay someone to essentially hold up a mirror. I'm writing a book, and my book editor says, no one wants to hear that, Brandy, but I keep saying it. I do believe that everyone has all the answers. Like we
Mhm.
do go to other people and we listen to podcasts, and it's nice to be in community with one another. We're actually meant to be in this lifetime. So you'll always have other people, but you also want to have that like depth of knowing that you do have all your own answers. And the more introspective you can be, the more you can catch those little things, the more you're going to shift your life, the more quickly you're going to shift your life.
I see that to be true in working with people and their financial decisions as well. Some people, it's just like the basic skills that they're ready to talk about and open up about, which is like, having enough money in the bank and cash flow that works positively and things like that. And of course, then there's, additional degrees of difficulty, whether it's tax planning for successful higher earning people or retirement planning, which can be more complicated. But then when you get to the purpose and feelings side of things, that doesn't start off with everyone right off the bat. But if you can go there, if you're willing to open up about those types of things and contemplate them yourself first,
Yeah.
I can't as an advisor say, oh, let's dig deep into purpose and your feelings with money right off the bat unless you're open to it, and that is that, kind of self-diagnosis. Then that's where, kind of truly extraordinary legacy or goals
Mm.
can occur. And everybody's not ready for that all at once, right?
No. Definitely not, right? And also like we're constantly evolving, right?
Mhm.
So sometimes you'll pull back a layer of an onion and you're like, I can like tackle this aspect of it now. You may not even know that consciously. And then later you're going to come back, to peel back another layer. And the point isn't actually to solve it all, right? Like that's the actual human experience, is that, or solve it all in one moment. We solve it over time. We continue to work with it, and the most important part is that we just have grace with ourselves as we go through the process.
Well, I think the process truly, like, thinking more about the journey being the destination in essence, like, you instead of being, "Oh, we need to end up here and then this," having, and so see that with your alignment stage, right? Like, you can't be peaceful then if you're not peaceful now. You Thinking through the journey being, kind of the whole point,
Yes.
and not waiting to either live or enjoy or be comfortable. That's such a big deal, and it takes work, right? It just doesn't
Yeah,
magically happen day to day, at least for
it
most of
doesn't,
us.
plus one for that. That's so true. So true.
So we've done number 3, and this is a 4-step process, right?
Yeah. So the fourth step um tends to have, we'll call it the heaviest lift. So the
Mhm.
fourth step is really about emotional resilience. And so this is work that normally starts like with some deep reflection. It may include a therapist. Like it is really about like looking back over the totality of your life and trying to understand what events that were either stressful, little t traumatic, or big T traumatic have occurred in your life that are causing you to still hold on to some of those dense emotions that we talked about, right? So when we have dense emotions connected to a past event, we normally create patterns that in some way replicate that past event in our current life. And so
Mm.
the work that we need to do is to disentangle ourselves from that stressful and or traumatic event and keep the wisdom of it, because no matter how bad something is that has happened to us, there's always a wisdom that comes from it, and we hold on to the wisdom and we really release those dense emotions. You don't have to be happy that it happened to you, but you do want to be at that place of just like neutrality, right? So this happened to me. For me, I had this kind of really triggering encounter. And anytime someone would bring it up, I would like find myself crying about it and I wouldn't want to talk about it. And so that's how we know that we still haven't gotten to that place of neutrality. And now if someone brings it up, I can have a conversation about it. I talk about it matter of factly. It just is like a part of my history, but it doesn't define me. And we let these stressful or traumatic events begin to define us when we aren't able to kind of do that work, do that lift to disentangle from it. And so it is in service to ourselves and to our own good to really kind of excavate those happenings, even like taking a piece of paper and writing down like these are all like the things that have happened to me that I don't love. And it can be from, a physical like car accident to like something, an encounter with another human and everything kind of in between. It could be a dog bite, it could be a parent yelling at you. Everyone's brain interprets kind of stress. It could be a teacher. I had a teacher one day stand me up in front of the room and make me pronounce a word like 10 times because they said I was mispronouncing it. And that was like very like bothersome to me. Like anytime I was asked, like called in front of a room for like many, many years, I was like, what's going to happen up there? Right.
Mhm.
And so, like, looking back as an adult, that doesn't seem so terrible. But the little girl in me was still kind of holding on to the energy of that moment. And so we just want to assess those things and start to do the work. You won't do it overnight because you've lived an entire life, but start to do the work to let those things go.
I mean, I think you're describing skills that equal resilience, and whether it's managing your career, managing your family, managing your mindset, or your approach to money, resilience really is the unspoken thing that you need. How everything is not going to always go smoothly or as planned. There are surprises and opportunities that are positive as well as traumatic and loss oriented. But if you can build that emotional resilience, then you will be less likely to make decisions and choices that are, based on fear and protecting yourself, but that may derail kind of your long term prospects. So I think that
Yeah.
is so powerful to discuss.
And what we start to see is the more resilient we are, the less those events show up in our lives. So it's a
Yeah.
skill set that actually prepares you to no longer have to deal with the very thing you're prepared to deal with. So it's like a superpower to be resilient. It helps you in all the ways. And scientists aren't sure, is it because you now see the world differently or is it because your experiences after actually change? But I don't think it matters. What I think matters is that you're suddenly in this place where you're feeling as though you're moving through life in a way that no longer seems heavy or seamless, or where you're not always like watching out for what might happen.
Yeah, that neuroplasticity it changes your brain, right? To
Yes.
be more prepared to kind of make decisions without your caveman, your inner cave woman of kind
Yes.
of making decisions out of fear or
Yes.
like you
Our
said,
primal brain
what's
will kick
lurking.
in. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And we want to do our very best to be using, the foremost portion of our brain as we're navigating life. It just somehow always turns out better that way.
Well, based on this discussion, I know I'm going to be thinking about this base framework, the beliefs, the alignment, the self acknowledgement, the self awareness, and emotional intelligence. So, I mean, it's so important for all of us. And I love that you're doing this work with important leaders, hopefully changing outcomes for many people. Can you tell people how they can find you if they're interested in learning more about the work that you're doing, Brandy?
Absolutely. You can find me kind of like on every single platform at Brandy with an I, Brandy B. like boy, Hudson like the river. So Brandi B. Hudson, that's my website, Instagram, YouTube, every
We'll have all
platform.
that in show notes.
Yeah. So I'd love to connect. And you can also email me at hello@hibrandy.com, Hi Brandy. And I love to hear from people with any questions that you have, or just, as I mentioned earlier, build community.
Well, will you rejoin us when your book comes out?
I would absolutely love to. I
That would
would
be
love to.
amazing. And for everybody listening, you might put this episode on a bookmark. And when you have those days that just, the traumatic events of the past have resurfaced, or, you just feel that something is off, maybe you can re-listen and remind yourself about these base skills that can really help you to live life with more success, more resilient success, and less pressure. I love that. For everybody deserves that.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me
Yeah,
today.
thanks for joining us, Brandy. Have a great day.
You do the same. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. If you found value in this episode, the best way you can support the podcast is to forward an episode to a friend or leave a review. Go to pearlplan.com and the podcast link to get all the resources and links mentioned. This presentation by Pearl Planning is intended for general information purposes only. No portion of the presentation serves as a receipt of or as substitute for personal investment advice from Pearl Planning or any other investment professional of your choosing. Copies of Pearl Planning's current written disclosure brochure and Form CRS discussing our advisory services and fees are available upon request or on our website platform at pearlplan.com. The information that we share is meant to educate and inspire, not to serve as personalized financial advice. Everyone's situation is unique, so be sure to consult with your own financial professional for guidance that fits your life. And just so you know, the opinions shared in this podcast are my own and those of my guest, and they don't necessarily represent those of any organizations that I'm affiliated with. For more important disclosures, please go to our webpage at pearlplan.com.